I don't think they would. They would rather not do
Like you're saying that. Some in their 80s. And I absolutely support using. Do you know what that's called? What you're doing is self-intimidation.
I know they're only open.
Okay, I was so sorry that
Somebody asked a million.
they want no idea. The long, my worries.
They are in a base, but they've got a rubber band around the stem. And I don't think that white napkin's supposed to be on there.
Mike said he owns.
Well, at this point, I'd rather just meet on her age. Can we live with it? It's just the way it's supposed to be. Maybe they didn't want to see the stem. Maybe so.
Oh, I'm so sorry. That's horrible. Singing is
He
absolutely.
did. He had it on his phone for a lot.
But now that being said, get over it.
Oh, yes.
Oh, my God. We should have coffee.
The realities of building and everything.
Thank you, Carol. We're going to miss her playing. This is the last Sunday she's scheduled to play this summer. We'll look forward to you coming back in the spring. Welcome, everyone, to the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Door County, those gathered here and those who are watching at home. This congregation welcomes all who are seeking a clearer understanding of their place in the world and a deepening of their spiritual life. I'm Vicki Ash, a member of this fellowship, and I'm happy to be your service leader again this morning. I especially welcome this morning our speaker, Member Estella Lauder. We're fortunate to have you speaking to us today. I can remember the last time I heard her speak, and I'm looking forward to hearing her again. Many of us here in Door County and beyond have benefited from the wisdom and teaching of Estella. After her retirement from teaching at UW Green Bay and UW Oshkosh, she taught many classes at the Clearing and was also the Door County Poet Laureate from 2013 to 2015. I have those dates right? Okay, good. Her topic today, woke, is sure to intrigue and I suspect enlighten. A warm welcome to those of you who are here for the first time or returning after an absence. If you're comfortable doing so, please stand and introduce yourself so we can greet you by name. I'm looking over there. Yes, I am.
I'm Alan Pivotal. I'm the artist in the gallery this month. And this is my husband.
Hakeem. Welcome. Welcome.
This will give you a chance to ask Helen any questions you might have now that you've seen her work. So she'll be in the gallery during the coffee hour if you have any questions.
Thank you. Do we have any other? I'm seeing mostly familiar faces this morning, and that's wonderful. Thank you. A few housekeeping announcements as usual. Please turn off your cell phone or any other noisemaker you might have brought with you. If you have trouble hearing at any point, please give us kind of a little wave, and there are some adjustments that can be made. There will be a talk back after the service. Help yourself to beverages and then gather here when the chimes ring about 15 minutes after the service, and we can visit with Estella. And there are additional important announcements on the back of your service leaflet today. If you haven't looked, you might want to take a look at those. Are there any brief announcements for the good of the fellowship? If so, Terry has the mic.
Good morning. I want to draw your attention and invite you, please, to return here at 7 o'clock tonight. There is going to be a recital by two beloved people who play for us regularly, Jody DeSalvo and Jonathan Bass. And Jonathan, of course, is the pianist from Washington Island. They're going to be presenting a recital they call Fall Favorites, and it's an eclectic mix of single solo pieces as well as some four-hand pieces, which will be very, I heard the rehearsal a couple of nights ago. It's absolutely wonderful. It is free and open to the public, and a free will offering will be taken. And again, that's 7 o'clock. Oh, I will be singing 3 very familiar songs. Yes, 7 o'clock tonight. Thank you. Oh, to that end, could a couple people help me move the piano right after the service? Thank you.
Other announcements this morning? All right, then with that, we will now begin our service. You'll notice there's been a little bit of rearranging up here. I think it's a test of our willingness to change. The opening words and the closing words, and indeed some other words during this morning, are in recognition of Banned Book Week 2023, which we are beginning today and runs through the 7th. This reading is from Angie Thomas's book, The Hate You Give. I can't change where I come from or what I've been through. So why should I be ashamed of what makes me, me? Please stand as you are able for hymn number 124, Be That Guide, and remain standing for the unison affirmation and the doxology. We gather together to seek knowledge and wisdom, to explore freely the vast reaches of mind and spirit, to celebrate within a caring community those truths, ancient and modern, which give meaning and direction to our lives. From all that dwell below the skies, let songs of hope and faith arise. Let peace, goodwill on earth be sung, in every land, by every tongue. Please be seated. On the first Sunday of the month, our focus often turns to revisiting one of the 7 principles of Unitarian Universalists. I would like to read a quote from one of the top 100 banned books in America. It's hard to exactly place this message as into just one principle. So I invite you to decide for yourself just where you think it belongs in the 7. I have an idea, but you may have a different one. This is from the 25th chapter of John Steinbeck's book, Grapes of Wrath. There is a crime here that goes beyond denunciation. There is a sorrow here that weeping cannot symbolize. There is a failure here that topples all our successes. The fertile earth, the straight tree rows, the sturdy trunks, and the ripe fruit. And the children dying of hunger must die because a profit cannot be taken from the orange. The coroners must fill in the certificates, died of malnutrition, because the food must rot if not sold for a profit. And the eyes of the hungry, there is a growing wrath. In the souls of the people, the grapes of wrath are filling and growing heavy for the vintage. If you have a joy that fills your heart this morning, or a concern that may be made lighter by sharing it, we invite you to do that now. Terry will bring the microphone, and a reminder that this is being broadcast on YouTube today and in the future. Joys and concerns this morning?
I'm just going to stay seated. I have back issues, but I also have gallbladder issues, and I'm going to be having surgery on Thursday. So my husband is more nervous about this than I am, and he's going to need some hand holding. So if anybody, especially the fellows, want to drop by and take a walk with him or something while I'm recuperating, that would be really great. or, help him out with the dogs. That would be super. I think we're all set for the first day, and I think I'm going to be fine, but I just don't know how it's going to go. So I'll let you know.
Thank you, Jamie.
I have a joy. And really, it's so profound for me because what I'm about to tell you is something that is more meaningful than any other children or grandchildren I have. I had a great grandchild born this week. A great grandchild, my goodness. William White Tanis, who lives in Georgia. But the point is that it also, it's just so profound on the cycle of life. That's what it is. And this journey. When this kid turns 18, I'm starting a college fund for it. When he turns 18, I will be 103.
Wonderful. Thank you.
This didn't make it in the order of service, but those lovely flowers are for Juliana Newman. I don't think she's here today with us, but I will see that those get to her. And she worked so hard for the fellowship. She worked really hard on something for our insurance this week, an annual audit. And she's so detail oriented and she cares so much about this place.
Thank you, Sarah.
So I just want to announce that on Friday morning, Ann Clark passed away at Scandia. She was at peace. I saw her on Thursday, I think, and she was resting comfortably.
Thank you.
Good morning. This week I had both a joy and a concern happen to me. On Wednesday, my mom had surgery, and this is actually a joy. They took out a mass thinking perhaps it was going to be cancer, and it is not. So that was
Oh,
very
wonderful.
exciting news for our family to hear that. But my concern is also something that happened in our county this week, and that is that our county board voted that on county flagpoles, they will no longer fly the pride flag. So the organizations that are in support of pride flags being flown are asking individuals to purchase flags and fly them at their homes or businesses so that we can show in our county that we truly do value diversity and being inclusive, even though our county board put up a big, handout that we maybe need to question that a little bit. So please show your support as you can.
Thank you. Anything else? Oh, here we have one.
I guess my concern, COVID, we have some folks in the family that are still battling that thing. And, we're hoping things, come together. We beat it before, so hope we do it again. And joy is, wherever I go, you guys are there. So I'm grateful to the Unitarians. Thank you.
And thank you. That was lovely. Thank you. And COVID, yes, we need to still be vigilant, don't we? I appreciate that. All right. Now we will have the offering in support of this place and the ministry it inspires. Please remember that giving can be done on the website at uufdc.org. I invite you to join me in a moment of silence. Let's still our minds and open our hearts to the here and now.
Good morning. I'm going to frame this talk with two poems. And one is a classic poem that you may know from Maya Angelou, 1978, Still I Rise. You may write me down in history with your bitter, twisted lies. You may trod me in the very dirt, but still, like dust, I'll rise. Does my sassiness upset you? Why are you beset with gloom? 'Cause I walk like I got oil wells pumping in my living room? Just like moons and like suns, with the certainty of tides, just like hope springing high, still I'll rise. Did you want to see me broken, bowed head and lowered eyes, shoulders falling down like teardrops, weakened by my soulful cries? Does my haughtiness offend you? Don't you take it awful hard, 'cause I laugh like I got gold mines digging in my own backyard. You may shoot me with your words. You may cut me with your eyes. You may kill me with your hatefulness, but still, like air, I'll rise. Does my sexiness upset you? Does it come as a surprise that I dance like I've got diamonds at the meeting of my thighs? Out of the huts of history's shame, I rise, up from a past that's rooted in pain. I rise. I'm a black ocean leaping and wide, welling and swelling. I bear in the tide. Leaving behind nights of terror and fear, I rise into a daybreak that's wondrously clear. I rise, bringing the gifts that my ancestors gave. I am the dream and the hope of the slave. I rise, I rise. I rise. That's from 1978. And from our own period, Claudia Rankin writes, in the line at the drugstore, it's finally your turn. And then it's not as he walks in front of you and puts his thighs on the counter. The cashier says, "Sir." She was next. And when he turns to you, he is truly surprised. "Oh my God, I didn't see you." "You must be in a hurry," you offer. No, I really didn't see you." (1978 to 2020). Okay, so are you woke? What does that mean? There's actually a wonderful Wikipedia article about woke culture, and I'm not going to go into that kind of detail here. I'm instead going to do something very direct and I think very simple. I'm going to say that this is simply an African American English word, woke, that means awake. Are you awake? Are you awakened? And what is it that we need to be awakened to? This is a word that gained currency a decade ago in the movement Black Lives Matter. It's used somewhat differently within Black and white communities, and obviously I'm going to be talking mainly about what it means within white communities here because we have so few Black people in Door County. But I'm hoping for the discussion to bring some other perspectives. And what it really means is do you, do I, do we really see Black people? Do we really respect their needs and their right to live full lives, their right to change their conditions when that's necessary? Claudia Rankin just wants that man to see her, not to come up to the counter and take her place. And that act, the simple act of seeing that someone else is there, is a part of what is meant by being woke. Maya Angelou was able to ask for something a great deal more in the 1970s. She was able to ask for acceptance. She was able to insist on acceptance and on respect. I'm going to tie this concept directly to our first principle of respecting all human beings. Another step to being woke, I think, emerged from the BLM movement. So beyond accepting and respecting individual Black persons, are we willing to stand with those persons, work with them in the process of changing rules and customs that restrain them? And either way, in relationship to individuals or in relationship to whole groups of people and processes and customs and so on. This word is entirely benign, as when you say, gee, I woke up and I knew I had to do something, right? We've all said that, haven't we? All of a sudden you wake up to something and you see it and you know that something has to be done. This word, this concept of being woke, simply favors making life livable for everyone, being aware when it's not livable for some people, doing something about it. Now, recently, the word has been turned into an instrument of derision by the Republican political machine. And I'm sure you've heard remarks like these, oh, Democrats don't do what they say. They just want to take away our freedom of speech by making what we say politically incorrect, making us feel guilty for things we didn't do. But way beyond that, recently the word has led to outright suppression or repression. in laws, literally laws, that restrict the use of the word woke in schools and public arenas, but also use that word to ban authors and books and historical facts. So instead of respecting Black people as human beings, these legislatures are voting to make them and their history in this country invisible. So literally to make it okay not to notice when a Black person is in front of you in line or whatever. Invisible. If these laws are not rescinded, they could eventually amount to a kind of genocide. We may think that such laws are particular to Florida or to Texas, but if they're not challenged, they can easily spread north and west through organizations like ALEC, the American Legislative Exchange Council, that write bills, generic bills for legislatures. Iowa already has a bill that allows parents and other interested parties to monitor what happens in K through 12 history classes. So people can come into your history class, and then if they don't like what you're teaching, they can bring their complaints to the legislature, and the legislature can then act on perhaps whether or not you continue to teach. The logic of this political response to being woke is really tangled. So while the word may be a call to action on behalf of others, it doesn't bind anyone to act, right? So it doesn't limit anyone's freedom in a way that is physical. But the loss of freedom to read novels, memoirs, biographies, philosophical works by Black people, the loss of freedom to know the facts of what happened between 1619, when the first slaves came to Jamestown, and the Civil Rights Movement, is a monumental loss in a democratic country. And the freedom to read Black texts and to know the history of the Civil War and beyond is remarkably new. It was born in the Civil Rights Movement and expressed in the publication of individual books long before it appeared in K through 12 texts or in college texts, in college syllabi. Chuck and I experienced this freedom at Wesleyan University in the 60s, where there were several young faculty members who were working on their first popular books on slavery in America. And so we were very aware of what was going on at that point. And I particularly remember the stir caused by Time on the Cross. Did any of you read that early on? Yeah. Chuck did. It was one of the first books to really assess the economic value of slave labor, and one of the first people to use econometrics, which was a part of the techniques of social history, which included, in addition to econometrics, attention to oral accounts, archives of newspapers, letters, financial records, military records. So it was a move away from the history that was based on great men and great events and so on, and began to look at the texture of the lives of ordinary people as accumulated in facts. So the facts of Black lives in America had really, up to that point, been known mostly among Black scholars and to those who had mined their own family history. And those facts became available to a larger audience of readers as books were published by major presses. And it soon became clear that if slavery in America had ever been benign, that as members of the Southern elite had claimed, it was really in exceptional cases. Books really created the conditions for Blacks and whites alike to be woke at that time, although the term was not familiar then. And they created knowledge for us to be woke about other groups as well, women, Latinos, Native Americans, and so many others. That is, books allowed everyone to see and to begin to understand what it was like to be Black in America, or to live on the margins of American society throughout its history. So this process of awakening extended way beyond the histories of protected groups. It extended to immigrants, to coal miners, to Appalachians. I mean, think of all the films that appeared in the 80s and 90s that really made those lives really accessible to other people. We just discovered a couple of weeks ago in Alaska, only 5% of those who stampeded the Klondike in the gold rush there actually struck it rich. And the rest of the people, the 95% who didn't strike it rich, lived lives that were very, very, very difficult. Who knew? So this attention to all lives instead of simply the lives of those who attain some great position within the society is really a part of this process of becoming woke. Remember, it's just an African American Ebonic word for a process of awakening to the realities, the real lives of the people around us, all of the people around us. So this opened up the possibility for all kinds of work to be done in various disciplines. And I think probably it has seriously disturbed the notion of American life that the highest ideal is to assimilate within the culture. It's not possible to assimilate in some cases, Native Americans and African American people in particular, and Latinos and others are not able to assimilate in the same way. And so ultimately it really causes us to question that value of assimilation as a requirement for being American. So it disturbs the culture at a very, very basic level. But from my point of view, what this did was to open up the possibility of really seeing the world from different perspectives. I was lucky to be a professor for 23 years in a new curriculum at UW Green Bay, and I was a department chair and associate dean for another 10 years at UW Oshkosh during the last third of the 20th century, when this process of awakening really began. And it was the most exciting part of my continuing education after the PhD. As I've told my classes at the Clearing, I had an opportunity to talk in the late 70s with the poet Audre Lorde about our difficulty in attracting Black faculty members to Northeast Wisconsin. And she encouraged me to go ahead and teach classes in African American literature until that problem could be solved. And she said, your colleagues think nothing of learning to teach Shakespeare. And, he comes from a different culture, really, and has a different language. Now, African American literature comes from this culture, and it's mostly written in standard English. Just do the same kind of work they do to teach Shakespeare. Yeah. So I began to do that work for a class titled Humanistic Values Through Literature that was part of the general education curriculum at Green Bay. So I team taught that course around 1980 with a white colleague who had specialized in African American history. And we used an anthology of classic Black literature that raised excellent value questions and embodied important values that were well known in various religious and civil contexts and were brilliantly expressed. We both loved this body of work, and I think that was probably one of the main things that got expressed within the class. Encouraged by this experience, then I went on to develop several other courses in literature by African American women, and I continue to do so whenever possible. I did not then and do not now introduce books to make people feel guilty about anything. It's quite the opposite. For me, these books are always an opportunity to expand our concept and our capacity for empathy. They're a means of expanding contact with others who have experienced the world differently. And they've often made a bridge with people that I've known or would come to know. In my experience, they often increase the reader's desire for people, unlike themselves, to flourish and to thrive. So as the conversation about Black history developed within and outside academia and more Black voices were heard, the harm involved in using the N-word or boy or girl or Black bitch or whatever really became apparent. It was a simple matter, and it is a simple matter, not to use terms that might affect a person's ability to thrive. It just seems so obvious. Even that later, when consciousness of microaggressions developed, most of the students were really glad not to offend a Black friend or a Black acquaintance. As our parents taught us in an era that David Brooks recently eulogized in an Atlantic article, there's little to no cost in treating another person with respect for the integrity of their personhood. Democracy itself might depend at least on this degree of moral consciousness. So the brouhaha over political correctness, as if political correctness were somehow a really serious infringement of one's freedom, is a sad confirmation of Brooks's observation that the country has lost decades of moral grounding. But now we're faced with state legislatures that would rather ban words and books and the verifiable history of our country rather than to respect persons who differ from them in race, ethnicity, color, religion, any of the significant dimensions of our lives. They would rather deny those persons the vote than to embrace the essential democratic principles of equality and the freedom to learn our country's history. These are serious assaults on UU first principle. So I'm thinking that we have perhaps assumed that that principle was above reproach in our society, but we are being reproached. The laws under discussion in state legislatures deny respect for the history of Black people, right down to their language. So even the word woke, this rather innocent word, which is a version of the word to awake, to awaken, all this is being denied. Such a fuss about an Ebonic word. What is going on here? White freedom to say whatever comes to mind or even to lie about our common history triumphs over respect for Black people. What on earth is going on? Under these laws, our first principle is being presented as wrong, right? There's a law against what amounts to respecting the integrity of Black people. Well, in my view, this is not acceptable. In good conscience, we can't stand by and watch how this unfolds. And therefore, I'm encouraging you to use the freedom that's being placed above all other American values at this point, freedom of some people anyway, use that freedom to speak out anywhere, anytime, any media that you can manage. On the most basic level, surely each one of us can speak out about the value of empathizing with the lives of others. I mean, who among us has not been proven wrong in our first assessment of people we don't know? I remember at a conference I attended at Oneida where we were asked to speak our hearts and minds while holding a talking stick. And I looked askance at two older men who were, maybe somewhat scruffy in appearance. But when they spoke, they showed just an enviable depth and maturity. I was just blown away. So if you've been humbled by such an experience, speak out, and speak out for humility. It supports the value of respect. If that's too personal, speak out for books that are banned from schools and public libraries. Read a book by an African-American author and write a paragraph about how it affects you. Send it to all your friends, send it to the Pulse, whatever. I noticed a week ago that Grace Johnson, the Pulse literary editor, wrote a brief summary of Toni Morrison's first novel, The Bluest Eye, which is now banned in several states. And it's an incredible book. It is just absolutely a masterpiece of literature. Of insight into how children form their ideas of who they should be and what they should be, and in extreme circumstances, how incredibly difficult that can be. Now, Grace's work was a good first step, but I was sorry not to see an argument for the restoration of this book or a testimony as to what it meant for her to read it. I think we have to go ahead and really talk about what these books have meant. Speak out about why it's dangerous not to know what happened in American history. And when somebody says, "Oh, it's just a matter of interpretation. You've got your interpretation, I've got mine," say, "No, no, no. It's not just a matter of interpretation. It's a matter of verification." People have spent their lives um, verifying the truth of the work that they have done. It's dangerous not to allow history to be verified, or once it has been verified, not to allow it to be told. It opens the door for demagoguery at home and ridicule from abroad. As the Sesame Street song said, everyone makes mistakes, and so do you. It's dangerous to set up one person, one region, one country, one kind of government as a paragon of virtue. We don't know for sure what the short-term motivation of this kind of repression and suppression is at the moment. It may be to remove reasons for reparations. It may be to bolster whiteness. But the consequences of this program reach way beyond greed and privilege, problematic as they are, into a future where fewer and fewer people and other living beings would be seen as worthy of respect. And this can't happen. We can't let this happen. So, not least, reach out respectfully to any person of color you know and contribute to whatever cause you can that aligns with our first principle, to keep this complex value alive. Let the world know that you will do whatever you can and that you're looking for ways to turn this disrespectful stage of history around, turn it on its head. I hope that you'll join me in discussion after the service.
Thank you so much. I look forward to our gathering in about 15 minutes. That will be like about 10 after 11, and we can all jump into this discussion. Please stand as you are able for hymn number 348, Guide My Feet. Thank you. You may be seated. The closing words today are from Maya Angelou in her sometimes banned book, I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings. I had given up some youth for knowledge, but my gain was more valuable than the loss.